जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवराधारी जय गिरिवराधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवराधारी जय गिरिवराधारी जय यशोदा नंदना जय व्रज जन रंजना जय यशोदा नंदना जय व्रज जन रंजना जय यशोदा नंदना जय व्रज जन रंजना जय व्रज जन रंजना जय यशोदा नंदना जय व्रज जन रंजना जय व्रज जन रंजना यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Om Jnanantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrijatan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Om Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabho Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ramo Rama Ramo Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. We'll get started with the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we will be doing the 24th chapter. And it is titled as Renunciation of Karadama Muni. It's a very beautiful chapter on how renounced is Karadama Muni and how his life, we'll just talk a little bit about his pastimes and then how he renounces from this material world and how dedicated he was to Lord. So we will go over with the first set of shlokas. The first text to fourth text, actually, Karadama pacifies Devahuti. Now, when we look at, we'll just look at a few translations and a few purports, beautiful purports by Srila Prabhupada. He says, recalling the words of Lord Vishnu, the merciful sage Karadama replied as follows to Swayambhuva Manu's praiseworthy daughter Devahuti, who was speaking words full of renunciation. Now, we know Devahuti was Swayambhuva Manu's daughter, and Karadama was her husband. And, she had 9 daughters and a son from Karadama Muni. And now Karadama Muni, who was the son of Brahma, he listened to his father's instructions, and he was one of the Prajapatis. Prajapati is a person who actually, produces praja, that means people. That was his duty to his father. So now once he does that, he's ready to leave his family life and go and renounce. And that's the entire chapter. So he's actually pacifying Devahuti. He's saying, do not be disappointed with yourself, O princess. You are actually praiseworthy. The infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead will shortly enter your womb as your son. So he says that, Devahuti is lamenting. She's, the before chapter we looked at where Devahuti was lamenting that her son, that she didn't know how to use her life. So she's actually lamenting for that. So he's saying that do not lament, you're very praiseworthy. Can we imagine that the Lord is going to take the shelter of the womb of Devahuti? He says, you have undertaken sacred vows. God will bless you. Hence, you should worship the Lord with great faith through sensory control, religious observances, austerities, and gifts of your money in charity. The sage said, do not be disappointed with yourself, O princess. You're actually praiseworthy, because the infallible Lord was going to be born in her womb. Now, this is a conversation between the two, that her husband is mentioning to her that Karadama Muni is encouraging his wife not to be sorry, thinking herself as unfortunate, because the Supreme Lord, and who's the Supreme Lord in the form of Kapila Dev, is going to be born in her womb. And that's the conversation they're having in the first 4 shlokas. Now, a few things that we have to keep in mind here is, in order to spiritually advance or to achieve a mercy of Lord, one must be self-controlled. He must be restrained in sense gratification and must follow the rules and regulations of religious principle. This is very important. And without austerity and penance, without sacrificing one's riches, one cannot achieve the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Karadama Muni is advising his wife. He says, you have actually engaged in devotional service with austerity and penance. Now, following the religious principles and giving charity, of course, the Supreme Lord is going to be born in her womb, and the Lord is already pleased with her. That's why he is going to be born as the son of Devahuti. So we will talk about how Kapila Dev appears as the son of Devahuti. Now, she talks about, why does Krishna come? Why does the Supreme Personality of Godhead come? He basically comes to disseminate the spiritual knowledge. He wants to give away the spiritual knowledge to all the living entities who are suffering in this material world. Now, he descends as the son of a devotee, being pleased with the devotee's devotional service. Now, Lord is already decided who he is going to come into, and therefore no one is actually his father. He is the Supreme. But he accepts some of the devotees as his parents and descendants. So basically, a very important part in this particular verse is he talks about, if you look at the translation, he says, vanquish the knot of your heart by becoming your son. So what does that really mean, vanquishing the knot? Prabhupada explains very beautifully in the purport. He says that it is explained here, the spiritual knowledge, when we talk about Om Ajnanatimirandasya, there is a torchlight of knowledge that the spiritual master helps this living entity to know that you don't belong to this material world. He says the knot of the heart, that is matter and spirit, are knotted by false ego. And this identification of oneself with matter, and a Sanskrit word to us, Hridaya Granthi, he says exists for all conditioned souls. And it becomes more and more tightened when there is too much affection for sense gratification. Now again, the explanation was given by Lord Rishabha to his sons. And what does he explain? He explains that this material world is an atmosphere of attraction between male and female. That attraction takes shape of a knot in the heart. And by material affection, it becomes still more tight. For people who hanker after material possessions, society, friendship, and love, this knot of affection becomes very strong. It is only by Brahma Bhavana, the instruction by the spiritual master, the spiritual knowledge that is got, it actually helps the knot to be cut into pieces. So we're understanding this, that getting more and more bound to the material world is not going to help any living entity. It has to, just the spiritual knowledge that is got from the spiritual master can cut this knot into pieces. Now, he says there is no material weapon. You can't take a particular knife and start cutting it. It's only the spiritual knowledge. Now, Kapila Dev appeared to talk about Sankhya philosophy. So, Sankhya philosophy basically talks about that. He tells that how to get rid of this material world and how to go back to the spiritual world. Now, he's talking about cutting the knot of material identification. I identify myself as this body, and this body is going to be gone. And this is a fact. People believe it, they don't believe it, it's a fact. But after a few years, people are going to be gone. So in the next few shlokas, it actually talks about the appearance of Lord Kapila Dev. It's beautiful. It actually is from the text 7 to 25. The entire, all these verses talks about how Kapila Dev appears. Now we know Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken to Parikshit Maharaj by Shukadeva Goswami. And we also see in Srimad Bhagavatam there are conversations between where, during the conversation between Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami, there was one saint, his name was Suta Goswami. He heard the entire recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. He goes back and repeats the same thing in the forest of Naimisharanya. There, the head of all the sages is Shaunaka. So Shaunaka is also asking sometimes questions to Suta Goswami about, oh, okay, did this happen? Did this happen? So there are these two conversations happening simultaneously. And there is also another conversation that's happening that is between Vidura and Maitreya. So the next translation actually explained, Maitreya is saying, Devahuti was fully faithful and respectful toward the direction of her husband Karadama, who was one of the Prajapatis, or the generator of the human beings in the universe. O great sage of the human beings in the universe, O great sage, she has thus begun to worship the master of the universe. So she heard from her husband that her only duty now is to think about the Lord and dedicate her life in surrendering to him. Now this is the process of self-realization. Now looking at that, he talks about how Karadama Muni was Devahuti's husband, but he also became her spiritual master, because he is giving her the route to go towards spiritual perfection. Now, there are many instances wherein the husband becomes the spiritual master. Lord Shiva is the spiritual master of his consort Parvati. And a husband should be so enlightened that he should become the spiritual master of his wife in order to enlighten her in the advancement of Krishna consciousness. Generally, Stri or women, they need the help of a man. So according to the Shastras, it is said that earlier, when she's young, it's her father who takes care of her, then it's her husband, and then it's her son. So in this situation, we know that Karadama Muni is going to renounce his family life, and he's going to move on, and his son, Kapila Dev, is going to take care of his mother. He's going to explain to her what is the situation and how they can take up to this process of Krishna consciousness. Now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, has especially stressed the instruction of the spiritual master. Now, one should accept the instruction of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. Whether one be liberated or not liberated doesn't matter, but they have to accept spiritual master as life and soul and just follow in his footsteps so he achieves the highest destination. Now, in the next part, he very nicely continues. He says, after many years, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the killer of the demon, Madhu, that's why Krishna is called Madhusudana, having entered the semen of Karadama, appeared in Devahuti just as fire comes from wood in a sacrifice. Now it is said that fire is already present in wood. So that's the reason in forest fires, when two trees actually rub against each other, there is a fire. Nobody has to really go lit a fire in the forest. There are people who do it, but then the forest fires usually occur because of the dryness, the friction, and there is a fire present. Similarly, he's saying that having entered the semen of Karadama, appeared in the Devahut, because Krishna is already present everywhere. It doesn't have to be that he has to appear as, as a boar incarnation or as a fish incarnation. He's present everywhere, but he manifests. He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Wherever there is a problem, he will appear and he will see to it that, that he will make the change. I was just remembering recently they were talking about waiting for a Superman. It was a movie on education system and where people have to make a change in the way the education system works in the United States. So I was thinking that the real Superman is Krishna. Unfortunately, not everybody is really aware of it. He can come and take away everything, every problem that you have in your life, he can make it nil. Now, of course, Prabhupada explains in the purport, he says, Lord Nrsimha appeared from the pillar of Hiranyakashipu's palace. And now that doesn't mean Nrsimhadeva was available only in the pillar. He was available everywhere. But when Hiranyakashipu asked this question to his son, he said, will I find him here? He says, you find him everywhere. So he actually breaks the pillar and Nrsimhadeva appears from the pillar. Now, similarly, Lord Kapila Dev appeared from the semen of Karadama, but that does not mean that the nostril of Brahma or the pillar of Hiranyakashipu or the palace or the semen of Karadama is the source of the Lord. No, he is he is actually killing all the demons. He is the source of everything. So Prabhupada wants to make sure that people don't get that thought. He says, but we should not mistakenly understand that he was born just like an ordinary living entity. From a womb of a mother, like how a living entity takes his birth. Now this is at the time of his descent, so Kapil Dev is ready to appear. And so demigods in the form of raining clouds, they're so happy that this is happening. And they are raining clouds. They sounded musical instruments in the sky. The celestial musicians, the Gandharvas, they sang the glories of the Lord, while celestial dancing girls known as Apsaras danced in joyful ecstasy. Now, scientifically, if you go tell people that there are people living in upper planetary systems, they're not going to believe it. Now, we know from Srimad Bhagavatam that this is all happening. This has all happened, and this happens even today. Unfortunately, it's the the non-faithful, they don't understand the real, they don't have faith in the Lord, they don't have faith. So that's why they are covered by the Maya. They will not understand this part, that these things were happening and happen even today, but they don't have a sight to see. Prabhupada gives a very nice example. He says that if I can't see the little bacteria available, well, I need to use a microscope. How can I say that bacteria is not living? If I cannot see, I can't hear more than 20,000, less than 20 hertz and more than 20,000 hertz. That's my range. My hearing, anything that I say, infrasonics or ultrasonics, these things are not heard. Just because I don't hear it, I can't say that doesn't exist. Just because I feel that I have a body made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, and I can go in the fire, I can't say there are no living beings in the sun planet. And just refuting even the science, scientists, they say that there are fireflies, there are organisms living in the fire on this planet. Why leave alone a sun? So when it comes to all these things, it's very hard for us because we have the 4 defects. We have very limited capacity of our senses. So there are people who say, okay, can you show me God? Prabhupada says, do you have eyes to see God? So the most important thing is that when we can do this, then you have to go through the Shruti and Smriti. You have to hear and understand. So even, and Krishna says very nicely in Bhagavad Gita, he says that if you don't believe in this, then you'll have to believe death, because this is going to come. There is some way that people are, and he also already says the 4 things that miseries of life: birth, old age, death, and disease. Because this material world is dukkhalayam ashashvatam. It's a place of misery, and also it's temporary. Now, continuing the conversation, he says, at the time of Lord's appearance, the demigods flying freely in the sky showered flowers. All the directions, all the waters, and everyone's mind became very satisfied. So everybody was so happy that the living entities in this material world are dying, they are suffering so much, they need to go back home, back to Godhead. Now that's the reason he's coming. He's going to say Kapila Muni is going to say the Sankhya philosophy to people. It is learned herewith in the higher sky there are living entities who travel through the air without hampered. Now, how many of us can go say this to, there are spaceships that go from one planet, they want to reach another planet. They're working very hard. Now, there's a beautiful book called Easy Journey to Other Planets, which Prabhupada has written. The people can read that book and actually go to the other planets. But for a devotee, our goal is not to go to the other planets. We know very well that we don't belong to any of this material universe. I just wanted to show a beautiful picture of Karanodakashai Vishnu. If you look on the right side, the spiritual world is huge. It's beautiful. We all are part and parcel of Krishna. And, it's like we are sons and daughters of a very, very rich person. Now, we have told Krishna that we want to be independent. We want to stay away from you. We want to take care of things ourselves. Because we are part of Krishna, we have the same quality like him, but we are very minute in quantity. So Prabhupada gives a very nice analogy. He says, it's like the sea and the drop of seawater. If you take buckets and buckets of seawater and drink it, it's going to be salty. The drop is going to be salty. The entire ocean is salty. But in quantity, a drop is very tiny. And the whole ocean is so huge. So he's saying that we are same in quality. The ocean is Krishna and we are the drop in the ocean. So we have the same quality like Krishna, but our quantity is so tiny. And so when Krishna has independence, we also have our independence. We have to tell Krishna, no, I want to come back, I want to be with you. I don't want to be independent. We have to use our independence and tell that to Krishna. But if you don't do that, Krishna creates this beautiful material world for us because he loves each one of us. Now it's like a parent who always wants to be protective of their child. He will come, he will be with us, he will take care of us as a Paramatma. But he will not put his independence and tells, okay, do this, do that. No. Till a person tells to Krishna, no, I have surrendered unto you. I want you to help me. I want you to help me to reach the goal. Then for such wonderful devotees, it so happens that Krishna actually guides them from within. For people who do not want Krishna to disturb him, they will not even get into it. So when you're seeing this picture, so in one side of this beautiful spiritual world, Krishna is lying down, and from his skin pores, thousands of universes are emanating. And he is called the Karanodakashaya Vishnu. Now Karanodakashaya Vishnu, Karana is cause, and he's sleeping on a causal ocean. That's called Karana ocean. And from his skin pores, like when we breathe, we inhale and we exhale air. Each of our skin has skin pores. Each of the skin pores actually opens and closes, even for us. On our face, in our body, everything, like how we breathe in, breathe out. Similarly, of course, we get that from Krishna. So he's lying down on the Karana ocean and he's breathing. Every time he exhales, the universes emanate. Every time he inhales, the universes get back to him. So this is what is happening. He is lying down and he is inhaling and exhaling universes. Now he wants to be with the living entities in every form, every moment, in every atom he is present because he loves each and every living entity. So what he does is he enters the universe. Now you see little universes that are emanating from his body. He also enters the universe, and you see inside the universe, he is actually lying down here. If you see this picture, he's actually lying down inside the universe. From his navel, there is a small lotus stem that grows up, and Brahma is on top of that lotus. Now, we have seen these pictures in many temples, we've actually seen the carved ones. When we look at it, we need to understand that this is Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, who is inside each and every universe. He's lying down on Garbhodaka ocean. From his navel raises a stem, and the stem on the top is Lord Brahma. Now Brahma has 4 heads, if you see. Now what we are reading in Srimad Bhagavatam is about our universe. The universe that we live in now, our Brahma has 4 heads. There are beautiful stories in Srimad Bhagavatam which talks about there are Brahmas who have 10 heads, there are Brahma who have 10,000 heads, depending on the complexity of the universe. The universe that we are living probably is not as complex as some other universe where Brahma needed 10,000 heads. So these are 4-headed Brahma and he is on the top. Now the question is, where are we? We are actually in the middle planetary system. See, we are somewhere in the middle of the lotus stem. So every day, every time that we look around the universe, and it's not only our Earth planet. There are millions of other planets in the middle realm. So there is 14 planetary systems in the stem, starting from Siddhaloka just below Brahma, and it goes down till Patala Loka, almost till his navel. So we are somewhere in the middle. So people who are living in the higher planetary systems, they live for a longer time, they have a long life, and they are all in the mode of goodness. People who are living in the middle planetary system are in the mode of passion, and people who are living in the lower planetary system are in the mode of ignorance. That's called Patala Loka. So the more, and sun usually goes only till the middle planetary systems. So if you look at this, so we know that he has entered the universe as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. He also enters into each and every planet, and he also enters into each and every living entity, each and every atom. So he's present everywhere. So he wants to take care of the people. Now his request is there in Durga Devi is the caretaker of this Durgam. In Sanskrit, Durga means prison house. So when Durga Devi wants to take care of this prison house, so there are going to be 4 things: birth, old age, death, and disease. These 4 things will surely appear. So when it comes to Lord is merciful, he will keep coming and telling that, you know what, this is not your place to live. You need to go back home, back to Godhead. Where there is no birth, There is no old age, there is no death, and there is no disease. And that's why it's called Vaikunta. Vai means no, Kunta means these 4 miseries. So there is no misery there. Now how nice would that be? There is no old age, there are no pains, there is always only pleasure. And that's what we are always seeking for. So Lord has appeared as Kapila Dev here. He is going to explain the Sankhya philosophy to his mother Devahuti. Now it is learned herewith that in the higher sky, now we just actually went over that. So they showered flowers on the earth when Kapila, the son of Karadama, appeared. They were very happy. Now the higher planetary systems are so much more well versed than the lower planetary systems, because the lower planetary systems, they don't even understand that there is, there is a supreme person. Most of them don't get that. As you go down, they're more into sense gratification. Higher planetary system, they all know that there is a supreme and, that we follow in the order of it. Now, Brahma, the firstborn living being, went along with Marichi and other sages to the place of Karadama's hermitage, which was surrounded by river Saraswati. Now, Karadama's beautiful hermitage, where he lived with his wife and his 9 daughters, was near the river Saraswati. Now, Brahma was the first-born living entity. As we said, that Brahma was born on the lotus flower. So he was the first person. So there is a beautiful chapter in Bhagavatam that explains Brahma is sitting on the lotus flower. And when he first gets to know that when he opens his eyes out of meditation, he's very confused because he can't see anybody around. Now, it is said that Brahma is also a living entity, but he's a very, very great soul, because he gets directly hear the Srimad Bhagavatam from Krishna, from the flute of Krishna. So when he's sitting on the top, he's looking around. He goes through the lotus stem, he goes in the water, he goes everywhere. He's looking for him. And then he says, tapa. He hears a word called tapa that he has to meditate. He meditates, and then he gets to know that this is the way I have to create the universe, this is the way I have to do things, because things are already created. But basically, the main creator is, of course, Krishna. But Brahma creates the living entities. It's his job. It's like the king tells, the minister does. So Brahma is called Swayambhu because he's not born from any material father and mother. He's the first living creature born from the lotus which grows from the abdomen of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. Therefore, he's called Swayambhu. Swayambhu actually means self-born. He's actually born by himself. So Maitreya continued, O killer of enemy, the unborn Lord Brahma, who is almost independent in acquiring knowledge, could understand that a portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his quality of pure existence had appeared in the womb of Devahuti, just to explain the complete state of knowledge known as Sankhya Yoga. Now we hear this from many scriptures, especially Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, Prabhupada very nicely explains here. He says, the Lord compiled the Vedanta Sutra. He knows the Vedas perfectly. Similarly, the Sankhya philosophy is compiled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his appearance as Kapila. Now, he says very important thing here is that there was an imitation Kapila who has Sankhya philosophical system, but the Kapila who was not the son of Devahuti should not be considered. You have to look at the person who is a Kapila, who is the son of Devahuti. Now, people do want to get, Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, people, some of them, they want to be cheated, so that's why they get cheated. Now, if you're very envious, if this is the direction I want to take, so you go that direction. So a person who is very faithful, it's like this. When you have some very, very innermost secret, we would actually tell it to only people who we are very faithful or who's very friendly to us and who has faith and we have faith in them. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita is an open secret. It has lots of things. The 4 people read it, they might understand it differently, depending on their surrender. People who are totally surrendered to the Lord, who say that, yes, like Arjuna, I'm sitting on the chariot with Arjuna. I'm totally surrendered to you. I want to know this really. I don't have any other thoughts. I don't want any of these material, sense gratification. I just want to listen to you. That person understands Bhagavad Gita more than a person who's sitting down reading that, okay, I want to see if Krishna is the Lord. Let's see. So it's the mood in which the person actually wants to hear Bhagavad Gita. So it all depends on. So the receiving knowledge is absolutely independent. Now, another important point here is, he says, when the Supreme Personality of God appears, he brings with him all his paraphernalia of Vaikuntha. Therefore, his name, his form, his quality, his paraphernalia, and his entourage, all the belongings of the transcendental world. Now, real goodness is in the transcendental world. Here in the material world, the quality of goodness is not pure. Goodness may exist, Prabhupada says goodness may exist, but there must also be some tinge of passion and ignorance. In the spiritual world, unalloyed quality of goodness prevails. There, the quality of goodness is called Shuddha Sattva, or pure goodness. Another name for Shuddha Sattva is Vasudeva, because God is born from Vasudeva. So these are some of the important things. And so here, Kapila Dev is appeared, Krishna appeared as Kapila Dev in a portion of his portion. Now God expands either Kala or Amsa. Here it's a direct expansion. Kala means expansion of expansion. So there is basically no difference between the expansion of the expansion, and the Supreme Lord, as there is no difference between one candle and another. Prabhupada gives a very nice analogy. He says if you have one single candle and that has to light up 10 more candles, when it lights up the 10 more candles, it will have the same effect like how the first candle had. So there is no difference, but still we need to understand there was an original candle. And then he says, after worshipping the Supreme Lord with his gladdened senses and the pure heart for his intended activities and incarnation, Brahma spoke as follows to Karadama and Devahuti. So it is explained in Bhagavad Gita 4th chapter, anyone who understands the transcendental activities, basically if we understand what Karanodikashaya Vishnu, who is Karanodikashaya Vishnu, what are his activities, his pastimes, and who is Garbhodikashaya Vishnu, how he creates, enters into these universes and helps, and how Brahma is created. He says, anyone who understands that transcendental activities, the appearance and disappearance of Supreme Lord, is to be considered liberated. Brahma is therefore a liberated soul. He knew so much of it. He knows everything. We're trying to understand a tiny bit of it. Although he is in charge of this material world, he is not exactly like a common living entity. He is liberated from the majority of the follies of the common living entity. Now, Brahma is, even though he's a living entity, we can consider Brahma to be like one of us. He is he has majority of the follies of the common entity. He is in complete knowledge. And therefore, a worship of our Lord's activities with a gladdened heart, he also praised Karadama Muni. He says he's very happy because Karadama is his son, and he's very happy. He wants to encourage his son. He says that because his job was, as a Prajapati, go and create more living entities. There are living entities who have to be born into the material world. So that's the reason, like Daksha or Karadama, their work was to create more living entities. Now, that's the job that he did. So there is a verse spoken by Brahmana in which he says he does not know what the Vedas and what the Puranas are. But while others might be interested in Vedas and Puranas, he is interested in Nanda Maharaj. Here he is actually mentioning about how a pure devotee is always thinking about Krishna. Now, so therefore Brahma not only worshipped the incarnation of the Godhead Kapila, but he also praised his father Karadama for being a part of the working as a very good Prajapati. Lord Brahma said, my dear son Karadama, since you have completely accepted my instructions without duplicity, showing them proper respect, you have worshipped me properly. Whatever instruction you took from me, you have carried out, and thereby you have honored me. He is very happy, he is very satisfied. Some very important points in this purport Prabhupada says is, he says that the Father, it is supposed to be that Lord Brahma is the first living entity within the universe, and is supposed to be the spiritual master of everyone actually. And he is also the Father, the creator of all beings. Karadama is one of the Prajapatis, or the creators of the living entity. He is also the son of Brahma. Brahma praises Karadama because he carried out the orders of the spiritual master without cheating. A conditioned soul in the material world, this is the most important point in this purport, he says, a conditioned soul in the material world has the disqualification of cheating. He has 4 disqualifications. He is sure to commit mistakes, he is sure to be illusioned, he is prone to cheat others, and his senses are imperfect. Now we just talked about his senses being imperfect. We can hear more than this, we can see more than this, we can feel more than this. If we start really feeling everything, there are many millions of little microorganisms actually crawling on our hands and legs all the time. And we probably go crazy thinking about that little bit thing. But it's good that we don't feel or we don't hear. If we keep hearing everything, Anything infrasonic, ultrasonic, we will always keep hearing things. So that's a kind of a boon for living entities to live. But then again, they should understand they are limited and they can't they cannot think of hearing and seeing and perceiving everything that is existing. So Brahma praises Karadama because he carried out the orders. A conditioned soul in the material world has the disqualification because he has 4 imperfections. But if one carries out the order of the spiritual master by disciplic succession or parampara system, he overcomes the 4 defects. Therefore, knowledge received from the bona fide spiritual master is not cheating. Now, very important here, he talks about a bona fide spiritual master. Any other knowledge which is manufactured by the conditioned soul is cheating only. Brahma knew well that Karadama Muni exactly carried out the instruction received from him and that he actually honored his spiritual master. To honor the spiritual master means to carry out his instruction word to word. Now, he said this parampara system, it's so beautifully explained in one of the purports, analogies. Prabhupada says there is a powerhouse, if we have PG&E, that we get power in the state of California. So if you're going to get the power into our homes, we need to have a socket, and the socket should be connected to the powerhouse. Just having a socket, and if I plug in a phone for charging, it's not going to charge. So it's so important, I need to find out if the socket is actually bona fide, it's connected to the PG&E. Similarly, when we think about taking initiation into any parampara, we need to find out whether it's bona fide. We know from the Shastras that there are 4 bona fide sampradayas. One of them actually starts from the 4 Kumaras. That's called Kumara Sampradaya. One of them starts from Lakshmi, that is Sri Sampradaya. One of them starts from the Lord Brahma, which is actually us, Brahma Madhva Gauda Vaishnava Sampradaya, because Brahma, and then in the disciplic succession you see Madhvacharya, in the disciplic succession you see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then, so who actually gave the Achintya Veda, Veda Tattva, and then we, so this is one Sampradaya. And then, so we have Kumara, we have Shri, we have Brahma, and we have Shiva, which is Rudra Sampradaya. So people have to be connected to any of these sampradayas to really have the mercy flowing in order. So he says in this purport, he says that but if one carries out the order of the spiritual master by disciplic succession or the parampara system, he overcomes the 4 defects. He says that's the only way you can get overcome. You cannot think that I am a scientist, I'm going to work on this and I'm going to overcome. No, that's not the way it's going to work. You have to be connected to a bona fide sampradaya. So you could be in Rudra, you could be in Brahma, you could be Shri or Kumara sampradaya, doesn't matter. But what you have to do, you have to follow as per the Vedic scriptures. Just follow it and you will be able to go back home, back to Godhead. So sons ought to render service to their father exactly to this extent. One should obey the command of his father or spiritual master with due deference. Prabhupada says you just have to say, yes sir. Your father says something, you just have to agree. So 2 words in this verse are very important. One word is pitari and other word is guru. The son or disciple should accept the words of a spiritual master and father without hesitation. Now whatever the father and the spiritual master orders should be taken without argument. Yes, there should be no instance in which a disciple or the son says, this is not correct, I cannot carry out. So he says that this is so important. Now we know that there is the first birth of our body is made possible by the actual father, and the second birth is made possible by the spiritual master. Sometimes the father and the spiritual master may be the same man, and sometimes they are different men. In any case, the order of the father or the order of the spiritual master must be carried out without hesitation. So that's what the Shastras say. So with an immediate yes. So Prabhupada says it has to be immediate. You're not going to think for some time and say, maybe I will do it or may not be. He says immediate yes. In any case, the order of the father or the order of the spiritual master must be carried out without hesitation with an immediate yes. There should be no argument as such. Now, this is confirmed in Upanishad, the import of Vedic instruction. This is another point. The import of Vedic instruction is revealed automatically only to one who has implicit faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As we just said that we will not reveal our innermost secrets to anybody who is envious of us, who doesn't have faith in us. So similarly, we can't expect Krishna to reveal his innermost secrets to a person who goes against him and says, I want to prove you wrong. he doesn't, I mean, Krishna doesn't have to prove to anybody. It's just the ignorance of the person that he is actually even making an attempt to do that. So the more a person is surrendered, the more he realizes the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. So it is very important that they actually have that complete conviction and hear from the Lord right. Now Lord Brahma then praised Karadama Muni's 9 daughters, saying, "All your thin-waisted daughters are certainly very chaste. I'm sure they will increase their creation by their own descendants in their various ways." So the purpose of having 9 daughters is they can actually have children and the race of human race will increase. So Brahma was concerned in the beginning because when he saw Karadama Muni, he had already begotten 9 nice daughters, so his concern that he had in the beginning was gone. He was hopeful that through the daughters, many children will be born. So he's very happy about that situation because he's come to the hermitage in the bank of Saraswati to meet Karadama. And he came with a few people. So let's see who he got them married to. He got the 9 daughters of Karadama married to a few sages. "Therefore, today, please give away your daughters to the foremost of the sages with due regard to the girls' temperaments and likings, and thereby spread your fame all over the universe." So the most important point here is we are understanding that marriage was actually, it was a connection between a male and a female depending on their temperaments and likings. So, that was what Lord Brahma is telling to Karadama. He says, the 9 principal rishis or sages like Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Bhrigu, Vashishta and Atharva. All these rishis are most important, and Brahma desired that the 9 daughters already born of Karadama be handed over to them. Here 2 words are very significant, Yata Sheelam and Yata Ruchi. The daughters should be handed over to the respective rishis, not just blindly, but according to the combination of the character and taste. Now, he says that in the modern world, the most important thing that people are looking at is they're looking at how pretty or how beautiful. He's saying that is not what is important. He says that man and woman should not be united simply on the consideration of sex life. There are many other considerations, especially character and taste. If the taste and the character differ between man and woman, their combination will be unhappy. So Prabhupada says that how in Indian marriages, the taste and the character of the boy were the first thing for all matched, and then they were allowed to marry. So it was more an arranged marriage, not, there is no dating between the boy and a girl. So they would actually just have this marriage only depending on what were their likings and, depending on what their adults decided. So this was done under the direction of respective parents. The parents used to astrologically determine the character and the taste of the boy and girl, and then they corresponded the match were selected. So the purpose of the astrological chart was to basically to find out how was the taste and how was, what was the character of the person. And then this girl and this boy were just suitable and they should be married. Now other considerations were less important. The same system was also advised in the beginning of creation by Brahma. He says that just marry your daughters according to the taste and the character. Now Prabhupada also mentions that he says according to astrological calculation, a person is classified according to whether he belongs to the godly or demonic quality. In that way, the spouse was selected. So a girl of godly quality should be handed over to a boy of godly quality. A girl of demonic quality should be handed over to a boy of demonic quality. Now in this, when we look at the society, most of them don't read Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. So they don't know how to live a life. Now when we buy a new computer, we always have a manual that goes with it. It says that, okay, this is how you have to handle this particular laptop, or how it works. Similarly, we have these scriptures that are present for any human body. It'll actually show us that how to use this body and how to get back to Godhead, how to cut this knot of material world. Now, unfortunately, that has not been followed. Now, here so nicely we hear that it talks about astrology. It talks about, as we go in Srimad Bhagavatam, it talks about astrophysics. It talks about nuclear sciences. It talks about pediatrics, how a baby is born, what happens on the first day, what happens on the second day. It goes, if you actually sit down to read a pediatric textbook, which I did while I was doing my course, I remember we never knew that there was any soul living before 3 months of age. Most of it, what we were looking at is after 3 months of age, the existence of the baby. The baby exists only after 3 months. But that is what the scientific textbook says. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, we know that the baby is present from day one. It's a soul that actually is developing its body under the care of the mother's womb. So we get to know so much from Srimad Bhagavatam. Unfortunately, people are going behind, they're researching things, but everything is already present. We don't have to research for anything. When we go into the certain chapters where nuclear science is explained, there is so much detail on nuclear science. It talks so much about atom, it talks about element. We sit down and read these big textbooks of physics and chemistry. I hope that we could take the physics and chemistry from Srimad Bhagavatam. Here he talks about astrological calculation and how a marriage should take place. So in astrology, what are you calculating? A person is classified according to whether he belongs to the godly or a demonic category. If you think that you put a match of your daughter, you see that she has a godly quality, of course she shouldn't be married to a person who has a demonic quality. But if the girl is demoniac, the boy is godly, then the combination is incompatible. They cannot be happy in such a marriage. Now at the present moment, because boys and girls are not married according to quality and character, most marriages are unhappy and there is divorce. And we see this happening every day, every time. Now it's more and more as the days have been going. Now it is said, it is foretold, he says in the 12th canto of Bhagavatam, that in the age of Kali, married life will be accepted on the consideration of sex only. Now that is what is becoming the most important part in this particular Kali Yuga now. Now the next translation, he says, O Karadama, I know that original Supreme Personality of Godhead has now appeared as an incarnation by his internal energy. He is the bestower of all that is desired by the living entities, and he has now assumed the body of Kapila Muni. So he tells to Karadama, I know that the original Personality of Godhead, he is going to appear in his internal energy as Kapila Muni. Now in this verse we find that Purusham Avatirnam Swa Mayaya, the personality of Godhead, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is everlasting, eternally the form of Purusha and predominator or the enjoyer when he appears. Now this is something that we've been, we know Krishna has a beautiful Shyamasundara form, and there are, in Bhagavad Gita also Prabhupada mentions, he says, there are fools, there are mudhas who consider the body of Krishna to be the body of a common human being. The word Sevadhim means that he is the original bestower of the necessities of life. And a beautiful, so when Krishna appears in the material world, he doesn't take a material form. He has his beautiful Shyamasundara form all the time. It might look to people he is a human being, but he is not. So when it comes to explaining this, Prabhupada gives a very nice analogy. He talks about a jailer. The jailer is the head of the jail, and he comes to see the inmates of the jail looking at, okay, if everything is fine, if everybody is getting their thing, and he will try to explain to them how they can be out of this jail and what good things that they can do, how to, basically that's why it's called a correction facility right here. So we try to help them to get corrected themselves so that they can be out. So we can't say that the jailer has to eat the food supplied there. We can't say the jailer has to sleep in the jail, or jailer will be bound by the rules of the jail. Similarly, Krishna is not bound by rules of anything when he comes to this material world. He just comes here in his own wonderful spiritual form and just to help out. And just to help out the living entities. That's the main difference between God and ordinary living entities. He says, the next translation goes, by mystic yoga and the practical application of knowledge from the scriptures, Kapila Muni, who is characterized by his golden hair, his eyes just like lotus petals, and his lotus feet, which bear the marks of lotus flowers, will uproot the deep-rooted desire for work in the material world. What was the purpose of his? He wanted to uproot the deep-rooted desire for work in this material world. Now, we talk about, in this particular purport, we see, in this particular translation, we see that it talks about the beautiful features of Kapila Muni, and the activities of Kapila Muni are forecast herein. He will present the philosophy of Sankhya in such a way that by studying his philosophy, people will be able to uproot the deep-rooted desire for karma, fruitive activities. I want to work hard, I want to earn money, I want to live happily. This is what the fruits are. He wants to enjoy the fruits of labor. A man tries to be happy by achieving the fruits of his own honest labor. But actually he becomes more and more entangled. One cannot get out of this entanglement unless he has the perfect knowledge or devotional service. It's such an important thing. He says that I work very hard, I work for my family, I keep working all my life. And he doesn't know that it is temporary. It's a temporary connection between these family members. And I was remembering a story which Prabhupada mentions in one of the purports. He says that there was this huge home which belonged to a very rich person. He cheated everybody around. He did very bad things to amass his wealth, and he wanted to give all this money to his kids. And of course, as the day went by, he passed away, and he became a cobbler. He became a cobbler's son, and who lived next to this big, huge house, which actually he built in his last life. So while he was a cobbler's son, he was sitting down, and he always wanted to go and see this house. But his own son, his past life, now his neighbors, would actually beat him up and throw him out. So when you look at all these things, what is the deep-rooted desire for karma? I want to achieve this. For who? Because I will have no connection with it anymore. I can be a PhD this lifetime, and I am born, next life I start with ABCs. I might be the richest person in the world today. I'm gone, I will be again born with no penny with me. So he says that then what is it? Then can you question why is this happening? So why? Because we are not in perfect knowledge. We have to start off with the devotional service. Those who are trying to get out of this entanglement by speculation, there are some people sitting down thinking, maybe things are this way, maybe things are that way, with their limited senses. They're doing their best. But in Vedic scriptures, we find that if one has taken up to devotional service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness, he can very easily uproot the deep-rooted desire of fruitive activities. Now, Sankhya philosophy will be broadcasted by Kapila Muni for that purpose. His bodily features were also described herein. So we talk about his bodily features. He said, Jnana entitles receiving knowledge from the scriptures through the spiritual master by disciplic succession. So we talked about how disciplic succession has to be bona fide. And Jnana actually is receiving knowledge from the scriptures. Now in modern age, there is a tendency to do research by mental speculation and concoction. But the man who speculates forgets that he himself is the subject to the 4 defects. We know he has 4 defects. He will commit mistakes. His senses are imperfect. He's sure to fall into illusion. And he is cheating. Unless one has perfect knowledge from the disciplic succession, he simply puts forth some theories of his own creation. Now, very important point is jnana means knowledge received through disciplic succession from the scriptures. And vijnana, so I never knew this before till I read Bhagavatam. I knew vijnana means practical application of such knowledge. Now, Kapila Muni's Sankhya system of philosophy is based on jnana and vijnana. So let's see how that goes. So he says that Lord Brahma then told Devahuti. Now this is a conversation continuing. Brahma is actually talking to Devahuti. My dear daughter of Manu, the same Supreme Personality of Godhead who killed the demon Kaitava is now within your womb. He will cut off all the knots of your ignorance and doubt. Then he will travel all over the world. So Brahma is saying, you don't have to worry. Can we imagine that the Lord is our son? So Devahuti was so fortunate. He's saying that you don't have to worry. Now, Lord is going to be born. He's in your womb, and he will take care of it. Avidya. What is avidya? Avidya means forgetfulness of one's identity. Every one of us is a spirit soul, but we have forgotten. We think I am this body. This is called avidya. Everybody's thinking I am this body. I need to take care of this body. I need to take care of my wife, my children, my husband. I need to do this. But they forget about the real purpose of the life. He says this avidya, samsaya granti, means doubtfulness. The knot of doubtfulness is tied when the soul identifies with the material world. The knot is called ahankara, the junction of matter and spirit. By proper knowledge received from the scriptures in disciplic succession and by proper application of that knowledge, one can free himself from the binding combination of matter and spirit. Now Brahma assures Devahuti that her son will enlighten her, and after enlightening her, he will also travel across the world distributing the system of Sankhya philosophy. Now, another beautiful analogy that Prabhupada gives here is he says that there is a beautiful parrot living in a nest, and it's a cage. And the person who is taking care of this cage is always painting the cage and is not taking care of the bird inside. And after some time, she smells something bad from her cage, and because she's never fed her bird, the bird dies. So she's always taking care of her cage. Prabhupada says we have to take care of the cage. We have to take care of our body. We have to take care of our family. But our center should be taking care of our soul. Our soul is part of Krishna, and we need to know what really makes the soul happy. Soul is happy only when in devotional service, because it's like a small part of a keyboard. If it's away from the keyboard, its usage is not there. If I put it back in the keyboard, you will be able to type it, type different things. So similarly, when you have the small little soul is part of Krishna. He is Rishikesha. Rishika means he's the master of the senses. When we use our senses for our own sense gratification, we're not going to be happy. When we actually dovetail our service in satisfying Krishna's senses, automatically we'll be happy because we are part of it. So the whole thing goes this way. He says the word samsayaha means doubtful knowledge, speculative and pseudo-yogic knowledge is all doubtful. At the present moment, the so-called yoga system is prosecuted in understanding that by the agitation of different stations of the body construction, one can find that he is God. Now he says that, you do all this exercise, you do all these things, it's actually very distracting. You should do the exercise, you need to take care of your body. There is no doubt. We have to have a healthy body so that we will be able to do our Krishna consciousness nicely. But our life and soul shouldn't be just having a healthy body. It's like just painting the cage and forgetting the bird inside the cage. The bird inside the cage, the analogy basically explains that it's like having taking care of the soul. And what does the soul need? The soul basically needs a connection with Krishna. And how do we get the connection? We're very fortunate. We are in the Kali Yuga where just Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared just 500 years ago. He says that in different ages there are different things that you do, but Kali Yuga, Kalau Sankirtana, that's the only way that you can get out of this. So you just have to simply chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And what happens with this? You're directly in contact with Krishna. So when you're directly in contact with Krishna, automatically you will feel happy. You'll feel the happiness because you are touching Krishna. When you say the word Krishna, you're actually touching him. So continuing with the translation, he says, your son will be head of all the perfected souls. He will be approved by the acharyas, expert in disseminating real knowledge. And among the people, he will be celebrated by the name of Kapila. As the son of Devahuti, he will increase your fame. Now, Sankhya philosophy is the philosophical system enunciated by Kapila, the son of Devahuti. Now, it's very important. Again, he says, the other Kapila, who is not the son of Devahuti, is an imitation. So this is a statement of Brahma. And because we belong to Brahma's disciplic succession, we should accept a statement that the real Kapila is the son of Devahuti, and the real Sankhya philosophy is the system of philosophy that he introduced and which will be accepted by acharyas, the directors of the spiritual discipline. The word susammata means accepted by persons who are counted upon to give their good opinion. So it's very important that who you're following. If I wanted to learn calculus from mathematics, I should probably follow a textbook from a person who's a mathematician. I shouldn't go and ask a person who is probably a geologist to teach me mathematics. So it's just common sense thinking that who should I hear from what and what should I hear from them. Sri Maitreya said, after the speaking to Karadama Muni and his wife Devahuti, Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, who is also known as Hamsa, went back to the highest of the 3 planetary systems on his swan carrier with the 4 Kumaras and Narada. So this is a beautiful thing, and he says that he's actually talked to Karadama. He told Karadama Muni and Devahuti, you have to have all your 9 daughters get married to these sages. And he talks to Devahuti. He said, don't lament, because Lord Kapila is actually in your womb and he is going to help you cut the knot of false ego and, the material attachment. And then he has a swan carrier. So he sits in a swan with his 4 Kumaras and Narada. Now 4 Kumaras and Narada are Naishtika Brahmacharis. That they never, so the word Naishtika Brahmachari actually means, if you see here, he says Narada they are Naishtika Brahmacharis. Naishtika Brahmachari refers to one who never wastes his semen at any time. They are not to attend the marriage ceremony of their other brothers. Now, they are people who have already decided that they will not get married. So Brahma left his other sons who were going to be married to the 9 daughters of Devahuti and Karadama, and he returned back in his swan carrier. Now, he has a beautiful swan carrier where he actually goes back to his realm above the Siddhaloka. Now, coming back to the conversation between Maitra and Vidura, he says, O Vidura, after the departure of Brahma, Karadama Muni, having been ordered by Brahma, handed over his 9 daughters as instructed to the 9 great sages who created the population of the world. So that was very important because the other living entities had to be born. So there was a reason why that these sages had to stay back with the 9 daughters. They were married and they actually created more population of the world. Now, even though the story is the same about Karadama and Devahuti, Kapila Muni and his daughter, Kapila Muni and his other 9 sisters, but what we are looking at here is the conversation sometimes changes it's a conversation here between Maitreya and Vidura. So we know that, so this shouldn't actually create any confusion. Now, Karadama Muni handed over his daughter Kala to Marichi, another daughter Anasuya to Atri. He delivered Shraddha to Angira and Havirbhu to Pulastya. He delivered Gati to Pulaha, the chaste Kriya to Kratu, Khyati to Bhrigu, and Arundhati to Vashishta. So these are the people. Now we know that how he decided that just by finding out their tastes, their qualities. He delivered Shanti to Atharva. Because of Shanti, sacrificial ceremonies are well performed. Thus he got the foremost Brahmanas married, and he maintained them along with their wives. So the foremost of all the Brahmanas were married, and he also each of them actually started maintaining their own wives. Thus married, the sages took leave of Karadama and departed full of joy, each for his own hermitage, O Vidura. So he is actually, so now all the 9 daughters of Devahuti are married to the sages, and they are, each of them actually left to their own hermitage. So when Karadama Muni understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the chief of all demigods, Vishnu, had descended, Karadama approached him in a secluded place, offered obeisances and spoke as follows. Now Karadama Muni is very happy. He is thinking in his, he's thinking, okay, my children are married now. Now he knows because he was a very, very great devotee. So he knows that actually the Lord had appeared. So he wants to go meet with the Lord in a secluded place. So he goes to the secluded place. Lord Vishnu is called Triyuga. He appears in 3 yugas, that is Satya, Treta and Dwapara. But in Kali Yuga, he does not appear. Now, when we are talking about the Kali Yuga, we are talking about the Kali Yuga that we are in today. There have been situations, there are other Kali Yugas that the Lord has appeared as Lord Venkateshwara and things like that, but he does not appear in this Yuga directly. But from the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, we understand he appears in a garb as a devotee in the Kali Yuga. Lord Chaitanya is that devotee. Krishna appeared in the form of a devotee, but although he never disclosed himself, Rupa Goswami could understand his identity, for the Lord cannot hide himself from a pure devotee. Rupa Goswami detected him when he offered his first obeisance to Lord Chaitanya. And what did Rupa Goswami say? He knew that Lord Chaitanya was Krishna himself. From a pure, he never disclosed himself. Rupa Goswami could understand his identity, for the Lord cannot hide himself from pure devotee. Rupa Goswami detected him when he offered his first obeisances to Lord Chaitanya. He knew that Lord Chaitanya was Krishna himself and therefore offered his obeisances with the following words: I offer my respects to Krishna who has now appeared as Lord Chaitanya. This is also confirmed in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. In Kali Yuga, he does not directly appear, but he appears as a devotee. Vishnu is therefore known as Triyuga. Another explanation of Triyuga is that he has 3 pairs of divine attributes, namely power and affluence, piety and renown, and wisdom and dispassion. Now, according to Sridhar Swami, his 3 pairs of opulences are complete riches and complete strength, complete fame and complete beauty, complete wisdom and complete renunciation. Here, these are the 6 things that we see in the Lord. There are different interpretations of Triyuga, but it is accepted by all learned scholars that Triyuga means Vishnu. When Karadama Muni understood that his son Kapila was Vishnu himself, he wanted to offer his obeisances. Therefore, when Kapila was alone, he offered his respects and expressed his mind as follows. So he's very happy. He sees that Kapila Muni is there. He wants to go and talk to him. He wants to converse with him. Karadama Muni said, "Oh, after a long time, the demigods of this universe have become pleased with the suffering souls, who are in a material entanglement because of their own misdeeds. Now, why would a person get entangled in the material world? Because of his own misdeeds. He does something, he gets that back. We know the law of karma. The material world is a place of suffering. It's dukhalayam ashashvatam, which is due to the misdeeds of the inhabitants, the conditioned soul themselves. The suffering are not extraneous, imposed upon them. It's not that the Lord wants living entities to suffer. They suffer because they cause suffering. The conditioned soul create their own suffering by their own acts. Now, in the forest, fire takes place automatically. It is not that someone has to go and set a fire. Now, as we had mentioned earlier, it's the friction between the trees actually. When there is too much heat from the forest fire of this material world, the demigods, including Brahma. Now, here the analogy is the forest fire that's happening in the forest, and also the living entities who are suffering because of the material warmth. So it's both in analogy. So when there is a lot of forest fire or the living entity suffering, Brahma himself, he's approaching the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He appeals to him to elevate the condition. Then the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends. In other words, when the demigod becomes distressed by the suffering of the conditioned soul, they approach the Lord to remedy the suffering, and the Personality of Godhead descends. So when that's the thing that when we see, we looked at actually the Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, the picture that we looked at, like he's lying down on the causal ocean. If you look at this is one universe. I'm sorry. He's lying down on the causal ocean, and from his navel stem, you see all the 14 planetary systems. You see Brahma on the top. So when we are looking at this particular thing, he's saying that Brahma is on the top, and he's actually feeling, oh my goodness, all the living entities are suffering. So he would actually go to Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. In every universe that you see, like when Karandakashaya Vishnu is emanating in every universe, in the corner of the universe there is a small little planet called, Shvetadvipa, where Kshirodakashaya Vishnu is lying down on Milk Ocean. In most of the stories, or when we watch something, usually you see this, Brahma and Chandra, Indra, they're all going and requesting, Lord, please help us out, we need help. So then the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends. In other words, when the demigods become distressed by the suffering of the conditioned souls, they approach the Lord to remedy the suffering, and the Personality of Godhead descends. Now when the Lord descends, all the demigods become enlivened. Therefore Karadama Muni said, after many, many years of human suffering, all the demigods are now satisfied because Kapila Deva, the incarnation of the Godhead, has appeared. They're all very happy. Now Krishna appears in different forms. He comes and kills the demons. He appears like a fish, so he can protect all the living entities there. He appears like a boar. He appears like a half man, half lion as Lord Nrsimhadev. He's here, he has appeared as Lord Kapila Dev, and he is actually, how is he going to cut the knot here? He's actually going to give the Sankhya philosophy. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes in. He's actually trying to kill the demon-like desires that we have in our heart and help us control our mind by giving us the holy names. Now continuing with the translation, he says, after many births, mature yogis, by complete trance in yoga, endeavor in secluded places to see the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, Karadama Muni was such a liberated soul. He was actually, he was such a mature yogi. He was completely in trance in yoga. He wanted to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in secluded place. So some important things mentioned here are about yoga. Bahunam Janmanam, this is Bahu Janma Vipakvena, means after many, many births of mature yoga practice. Another word that Prabhupada says it's very important is Samyak Yoga Samadhina, means by complete practice of the yoga system. Now, complete practice of yoga means Bhakti Yoga. Unless one comes to the point of Bhakti Yoga or surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's yoga practice is not complete. This same point is corroborated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Bahunam in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. He says, Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavam Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. So after many, many births, the jnani who has matured in transcendental knowledge surrenders and says to Supreme Personality of Godhead, I give up everything. I'm just surrendered soul. Just let me know what I have to do. I can, because he is in such a devastated situation. Karadama Muni repeats the same statement. After many, many years and many, many births of complete practice of yoga, one can see the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord in a secluded place. It is not that after one practices some sitting posture, we just talked about it, that you just do some asanas and then you will get moksha. No, it's not that way. It is not that after one practices one sitting posture, he immediately becomes perfect. No, it takes many, many births to become mature. And a yogi has to practice in a secluded place. One cannot practice yoga in a city or a public park and declare that he has become God simply by exchange of dollars. He says this is a bogus propaganda. Those who are actual yogis practice in a secluded place, and after many, many births, they become successful. Now for us, with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, a person can be a yogi even in a city. He can be constantly chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And we know that how a person becomes a sannyas or in samadhi is just because he is always thinking about the Lord. When you continuously think about the Lord, there's nothing much. There's nothing else that you have to do going to a forest. Now, not considering the negligence of ordinary householder like us, that very same Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in our homes just to support his devotees. So the Lord is always present. Devotees are so affectionate toward the Personality of Godhead that although he does not appear before those who practice yoga in a secluded place, even for many, many births, he agrees to appear. He agrees to appear in a householder's home, where the devotees engage in devotional service without material yoga practice. Now, a very important point is devotional service to the Lord is so easy that even a householder can see the Supreme Lord. Now, we are talking at one point that many, many births you have to take, and we're also saying that in other words, devotional service to the Lord is so easy that even a householder can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one of the members of the household, as his son or Karadama Muni experienced. The only way is, whatever we do, we just dedicate that to Krishna. We just chant regularly, we cook, we go to the market, we buy vegetables, we buy fruits, we buy that and offer it to Krishna and eat, because we eat in Krishna Prasadam. Whatever we do in our lives, we can dedicate it to Krishna. We work hard, kids study at school, they work hard because they want to give the grades dedicated to Krishna. There are people who work outside the workplace, they work hard, they earn good money so that they can give that money to Krishna for a service of Krishna at home, at school, at temple. They will be cleaning their homes because thinking that it's actually a temple. It is actually a temple and I'm servant of Krishna. My deities are the masters at home And then that's the way I can do it. So it's not very difficult. Karadama Muni experienced this. He was a householder, although a yogi, but he had the incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila Muni, as his son. Now Krishna is ready to appear in every person's house. Devotional service is so powerful, transcendental method, that it surpasses all other methods of transcendental realization. The Lord therefore says that he lives neither in Vaikuntha nor in the heart of a yogi, but he lives where his pure devotees are always chanting and glorifying his name. Now there are many saints who have even sung beautiful songs based on this one. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Bhakta Vatsala. He is never described as Jnana Vatsala or Yogi Vatsala. He is always described as Bhakta Vatsala. This is a very important point to note, because he is more inclined towards his devotees than toward other transcendentalists. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that only a devotee can understand him. Bhaktya mam abhijananti. One can understand me only by devotional service. So there is no other way. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says, Kalau nastyeva 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 gatiranyata. He says there's no other way in Kali Yuga. The only way that you have is to chant his holy names and surrender to the Lord. That understanding alone is real, because although jnanis, mental speculators, and they have all these things, they can realize only the effulgence or the body luster of the Supreme Lord. And yogis can only realize the partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A bhakta can actually realize him as he is. Now we know that Krishna has a beautiful form. Because of his beautiful form, there is an effulgence that comes out of him. He has the Brahman. Brahman is actually the effulgence that comes out of the Lord. And similarly, he also is in three will, which we'll be looking in detail. The third one is that he is also the Paramatma. So there are three features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now Karadama said, you, my dear Lord, who are always increasing the honor of your devotees, have descended in my home just to fulfill your word and disseminate the process of real knowledge. When the Lord appeared before Karadama, after his mature yoga practice, he promised that he would become Karadama's son. He descended as the son of Karadama in order to fulfill the promise. Another purpose of his appearance is Chikshur Bhagavan Jnanam, to distribute knowledge. Therefore, he is called Bhaktanam Manavardhanaha, he who increases the honor of his devotees. Now, what did he do? He distributed Sankhya philosophy. He wanted increase the honor of the devotees. Therefore, Sankhya philosophy is not a dry mental speculation. Sankhya philosophy means devotional service. How could the honor of the devotees be increased unless Sankhya were meant for devotional service? Devotees are not interested in speculative knowledge. Therefore, Sankhya enunciated by Kapila Muni is meant to establish one firmly in devotional service. Real knowledge and real liberation is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage in devotional service. So what is the real knowledge and real suffering? The real knowledge is just to engage oneself. And when a person doesn't engage oneself in the service of the Lord, he's actually really suffering. And the next one he says, my dear Lord, although you have no material form, you have your own innumerable forms. They truly are transcendental forms which are pleasing to your devotees. Now we just read about Brahma Samhita, beautiful Brahma Samhita, which was actually recited by Brahma and talking about the Lord being the Supreme, Krishna being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Brahma Samhita it is stated that Lord is one absolute, but he has ananta or innumerable forms. Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Mananta Rupam. The Lord is original form, but still he has multi-forms. Those multi-forms are manifested by him transcendentally according to the tastes of his multi-devotees. It is understood that once Hanuman, the great devotee of Lord Ramachandra, said that he knew that Narayana, the husband of Lakshmi, and Rama, the husband of Sita, are basically the same person, one and the same, and that there is no difference between them. But as for himself, he liked the form of Lord Rama. In similar way, some devotees worship the original form of Krishna. When we say Krishna, we refer to all the forms of the Lord. Not only Krishna, but Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, Narayana, etc. The varieties of transcendental form exist simultaneously. That is also stated in Brahma Samhita. Ramadi Murteshu, and he goes on, says, Nanavataram. He already exists in multi-forms, but none of the forms are material. Now, Sridhar Swami has commented The arupinaha, without form, means without material form. Now when we say that he does not have a form, he does not have a material form. Yes, he cannot be touched by matter. He does not have a material form. The Lord has a beautiful form otherwise. How can it be stated here, Tani evate birupani rupani bhagavams tava? You have your forms, but they are not material. Materially, you have no form, but spiritually, transcendentally, you have so many numerous forms. Prabhupada very importantly tells that Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand this transcendental forms of the Lord, and being disappointed, they say that the Supreme Lord is impersonal. Now we know that the Supreme Lord has three manifestations, but that is not a fact. Whenever there is a form, there is a person. Many times in many Vedic literatures, the Lord is described as Purusha, which means original form, the original enjoyer. The conclusion is that Lord has no material form, and yet, according to the liking of different grades of devotees, he simultaneously exists as Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, Narayana, and Mukunda. So there are thousands of Vishnu Tattvas. So they are all available. Now, continuing in that aspect, he says, "My dear Lord, your lotus feet are the reservoir that always deserves to receive the worshipful homage." I want to make sure that we move to the next slide in this one. So Karadama's prayer to Kapila Muni, and we're just doing that part now. Karadama is meeting Kapila Muni in seclusion because he is already very mature in his yoga, and that's what he's doing here. So he says, "My dear Lord, your lotus feet are the reservoir that always deserves to receive worshipful homage from all great sages eager to understand the absolute truth. You're full in opulence, renunciation, transcendental fame, knowledge, strength, and beauty, and therefore I surrender myself unto your lotus feet." So he says that actually those who are searching about the absolute truth must take the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, he says in the 9th chapter, he says, "Manmana bhava madbhakto madhya jivam namaskuru." If you want to perfect, just always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your obeisances to me. Now in this way you will understand me, the personality of God, and ultimately you will come back to me. Now I was thinking of an analogy in this aspect. If we tell our kids that there's nobody else in the whole entire world who will take care of you, so you need to come back to me, you have to take care, you have to come home and I will take care of you. If a child thinks, why is my mom even saying that? Why can't I be with someone else? I probably will be safe. It's just the ignorance of the child who thinks that way. Krishna is telling in Bhagavad Gita so many times, he says, "Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayashyami ma shucha." He says, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me and I'll take care of it. So if a person doesn't listen to it, it's just his ignorance. Krishna is directly giving instructions to people what they have to do. So he says, if you want to perfect and come back home, back to Godhead, that's what you need to do. Now why is it so? The Lord is always full in 6 opulences. He has all wealth, all renunciation, all fame, all knowledge, strength and beauty. The word purtam means in full. No one can claim that all wealth belongs to him, but Krishna can do. He can claim he has full wealth. Similarly, he is full in knowledge, renunciation, strength and beauty. He is full in everything and no one can surpass him. Another one of Krishna's name is Asammurdhva, which means that no one is equal to or greater than him. So this is talking the greatness of Lord Kapila, while Karadama Muni is actually having a conversation with him. He's saying that I surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, descended in the form of Kapila, who is independently powerful and transcendental, who is the Supreme Person and the Lord of the sum total of matter, an element of time, who is the fully cognizant maintainer of all universes under the 3 modes of material nature, and who absorbs material manifestation after this dissolution. So we did just look at the 6 opulences of the Lord. And, so Kapila Muni, his son, he's saying, he's using the word param. And the param word is also used in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, where he says param satyam. That is samam bonam. the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Param is explained further by the word Pradhanam, which means the chief, the origin of the source of everything. Sarva Karana, Karanam. That means the cause of all causes. He is the cause of all causes. He is the Purusha or the enjoyer, the original person. He is the time element and is all cognizant. He knows everything. He knows everything that happened in the past, everything that's happening today, and he knows everything that is going to happen in the future. Now, in every corner of the universe, it's just not at one place. So the material world, which is moving under the spell of the three modes of material nature, is, this is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. He says, Parasya Shaktir Vividhaya Shruyate. All the different material natures are also his manifestation. Everything that we see is an interaction of these energies. He says, Parasya Brahmana Shaktis Tatedam Akhilam Jagat. This is the version from Vishnu Purana. We can understand that whatever we see is an interaction of the three modes of material nature. But actually, it is all interaction of Lord's energy. Lokapalam. He is actually the maintainer of all the universes. Nityo Nityanam. He is the chief of all living entities. Now, Krishna maintains all the living entities, but no one can maintain God. That is his Swachhanda Shakti. He is not dependent on others. Now, when I say I don't want to serve Lord, I will have to serve something. I serve my family, I serve my country, I serve my boss. I have to serve somebody. But unfortunately, people are not realizing whoever they're serving Krishna because they're indirectly serving Krishna. They're all energies of Krishna. If you're serving, every living entity is an energy of Krishna, is a superior energy of the Lord. And if you're serving, the nature, then again that's inferior energy. So as it goes, whatever the person is doing, it's just that I have to serve. And Prabhupada gives a very nice analogy. He says that fire cannot say, I don't want heat. I want to start feeling cold. I want to start giving out, cold air. And that's not possible because the fire is born with the heat capacity. That's there in it. Similarly, living entity is born to serve. That's his job. That's it. He has to serve. If he doesn't serve the Lord, because that's his innate capacity, innate thing that is born with him. If he doesn't serve God, then he'll be serving everything else. And anyway, indirectly, the Lord. In Krishna book, actually, George Harrison Prabhu, very nicely, he mentions that everybody's looking for Krishna, but they don't know they are looking for Krishna, unfortunately. So, Kapila Muni appeared as the son of Karadama, but because Kapila is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, Karadama offered respectful obeisance unto him with full surrender. He knew that Kapila Muni is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So another word in this verse, he says the Lord descends either as Kapila or Rama, Nrasimha or Varaha. Whatever form he takes, he assumes in the material world are all manifestation of his own personal internal energy. There are never forms of material energy. Now here he's talking about the forms of the Lord when he comes as Nrasimha, Varaha, Kapila or Rama. They are all, again, the example of a jailer, where the jailer actually doesn't have to go over all the nuances that a person who's an inmate, who's inside the jail, he has to be under. The laws don't govern a jailer. The jailer goes and he walks out. That's it. The Lord descends. He does his job. He tries to reclaim the souls from the material world and goes back to the spiritual world. So there are never forms of the material energy. The ordinary living beings that we're talking about, ourselves, who are manifest in this material world, have bodies created by the material energy. But when Krishna or any one of his expansions or part of expansion descends to this material world, he appears to have a material body. And his body is not material. He always has a transcendental body. Prabhupada says, but Mudas or fools consider him as one of them, and therefore they deride him. They refuse to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they cannot understand him. In Bhagavad Gita, he says, Avajnananti ma mudha manushim tanumashratam. Those who are rascals and fools deride me. When God descends in a form, this does not mean that he assumes his form with the help of material energy. He manifests a spiritual form as he exists in his spiritual kingdom. Now, why, for people who don't believe in the spiritual part, we can think about those people who are spiritualized just by chanting Krishna's names. I was thinking there have been wonderful Maharajas who recently, a few years ago, passed away of, a health condition. It was said that the nurses were amazed by the fact that this person was chanting and crying and thinking about Krishna all the time. He was not suffering the way another person would be suffering in this particular situation. Because their body is spiritualized, they are already spiritualized. It's not just Krishna. Anybody who's in Vaikuntha has a spiritual body. Everybody has a particular service to the Lord. And then when God descends in this form, we should assume that his form is a spiritual form. It has nothing to do with matter. Today I have something to ask from you, who are the Lord of all living entities, since I have now been liberated by you from my debts to my Father, and since all my desires are fulfilled, I wish to accept the order of an itinerant mendicant. Renouncing this family life, I wish to wander about free from lamentation, thinking always of you in my heart. Now Karadama Muni is saying that I have given my daughters in marriage. I have the Lord coming into my house as the Lord. Devahuti is going to have a boy that is Kapila. Now he prays to the Lord, saying that I have done all my debts. I have done all my debts to my father, and since all my desires are fulfilled. Now his father is Brahma, right? Brahma told him, "You are the Prajapati, and you have to give birth to the children. That's your job." He says, "I'm done with all of that. Now I wish that I can give up all those things and completely think of you always in my heart." Now in this situation, if you look at the word sannyasa or renunciation of the material household life, it necessitates complete absorption in Krishna consciousness and immersion in self. Prabhupada explains this very nicely. A sannyasi is proud that he is always thinking of Krishna within himself. He shouldn't be a transcendental fraud in the name of sannyasa. The sannyasi's business is not to become proprietor of so many things and amass money from the innocent public. If he is doing that, again, he is binding himself to this material world and he is going to remain here. The purpose of it is totally lost. He says that one is called, there could be two kinds of sannyasis. One is Goshtyanandi, which means those who are preachers. They actually go talk to people, and they have many followers for preaching the glories of the Lord, and who live among those many, many followers, just to organize missionary activities. And there are also Atmanandi, who are self-satisfied, and they do not want to take the risk of preaching work. They therefore remain alone with God. In this classification, Karadama Muni falls. So a mendicant sannyasi should not live anywhere for more than 3 days. He must always be moving because his duty is to move from door to door, enlighten people. They have nothing to do with fire. So they don't cook, nor do they do any sacrifice. They are totally dedicate their lives to the Lord. But in today's age, how many people can actually go to the forest? So Prabhupada very nicely tells in the purport the meaning of what people in today's Kali Yuga should be doing. We'll go to the purport. Before that, we'll just do this translation. The personality of Godhead Kapila said, "Whatever I speak, whether directly or in the scriptures, is authoritative in all respects for the people of the world. O Muni, because I told you before, I would become your son, I have descended to fulfill his truth." He says he already had a conversation with Karadama that he was going to be born as a son, and so Kapila Muni, is going to be born as Karadama Muni and Devahuti's son. Now, Karadama Muni was to leave his family life to completely engage in the service of the Lord. But a person can think, now when the Lord is going to appear in your house, why are you leaving home? Right? But here it is said that whatever is spoken in Vedas and whatever is practiced in accordance with the injunction of Vedas is to be accepted as authority. Now, Vedic authority says a householder must leave home after his 50th year. Now, he says there are 4 systems of, we have departments of activity: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Now, Karadama Muni practiced yoga very rigidly as a brahmachari before his marriage to Devahuti. And he became so powerful and attained so much mystic power. We know that from the earlier chapter how he created palaces just because of his mystic power. But he didn't have any attachment to it. His attachment was only to Krishna. Brahma ordered him to marry and beget children as a householder. Karadama did that also. He begot 9 daughters and 1 son, Kapila Muni. And thus his householder duty was also performed nicely. Now his duty was to leave. Even though he had the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son, he had to respect the authority of the Vedas. This is a very important lesson. Prabhupada says this we have to learn. Even if one has God in his home as a son, one should still follow the Vedic injunctions. It is stated, Mahajano yena gata sapanta. One should traverse the path which is followed by great personalities. Karadama Muni's example is very instructive, for in spite of having the Lord, he left home just to obey the authority of the Vedic injunctions. Now in this age, this is very important for us who are living in Kali Yuga. In this age of Kali Yuga, sannyasa is prohibited because persons in this age are all Shudras and cannot follow the rules and regulation of a sannyasa life. It is very commonly found that the so-called sannyasis are addicted to nonsense, even to having private relationships with women. This is abominable situation in this age. Although they dress themselves as sannyasis, they still cannot free themselves from the 4 principles of sinful life, namely illicit sex life, meat eating, intoxication and gambling. Since they are not freed from these 4 principles, they are cheating the public by posing as swamis. So in Kali Yuga, the injunction is that no one should accept sannyasa. Prabhupada very nicely also says one very important thing. He says, of course, those who actually follow the rules and regulation must take sannyasa if you are able to follow the rules and regulation. Generally, however, people are unable to accept sannyasa life. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stressed, Kalau nastyeva 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 gatiranyata. In this age, there is no other alternative, than to chant the holy names of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So he says the main purpose of sannyasa life is to be in constant companionship with the Supreme Lord, either by thinking of Him within the heart or hearing of Him through oral reception. Now, a household wife can be cooking and chanting in her mind, can be driving to the market or going to work chanting. She could be always chanting. She could say that whatever she does is dedicated to the Lord. Like children can be doing it, husbands can be doing it. Every living entity can do it. He says, I want to read it again. The main purpose of sannyasa life is to be in constant companionship with the Supreme Lord, either by thinking of Him within the heart or hearing of Him through oral reception. So you can be listening to lectures from Guru Maharajas. Now in this age, hearing is more important than thinking because one's thinking may be disturbed by mental agitation. If you keep thinking about it, you get exposed to something, you just think about it. But if one concentrates on hearing, he will be forced to associate with the sound vibrations of Krishna. Now Krishna and the sound vibration Krishna are non-different. So if one loudly vibrates Hare Krishna, he is able to think of Krishna immediately. Prabhupada gives a very nice example between relative and the absolute world. He says absolute, Krishna, the word Krishna is absolute. The word, like for example, absolute world is, and we are living in a relative world. If I say water, I need to go pick a glass of water, I need to pour in some water and drink the water. That's what water, that's the time my thirst will quench. If I have a thirst in a relative word, I need to go get water and drink water. Prabhupada says in absolute word, I say water and my thirst is quenched. So if you say Krishna, you're actually touching Krishna. Because Krishna word is absolute. So he says Krishna and the sound vibration Krishna are non-different. So if one loudly vibrates Hare Krishna, he will be able to think of Krishna immediately. This process of chanting is the best process of self-realization in this age. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya preached it so nicely to the benefit of the entire humanity. So we have to think that in the absolute terms. So the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, when we are chanting, we're actually, that's the reason, the more we chant, I always feel that when I start chanting, I don't feel as much, but when I finish 16 rounds, I'm actually repeating the same verses. It's not that anything more. If I start doing, I went to the market, or maybe couple more sentences and do 108 rounds, I may not want to do it the next day. But the more you do, the more you want to do the chanting. That is something a person has to experience. It's something that person has to feel. He has to be able to chant regularly and do the devotional service. When you do the 16 rounds, you don't want to stop. You want to go for more. Because That is the effect of Krishna, because you want Krishna so much. Everybody is looking for Krishna, but they are not actually understanding that they are looking for Krishna. He says, my appearance in this world is especially to explain the philosophy of Sankhya, which is highly esteemed for self-realization by those desiring freedom from the entanglement of unnecessary material desire. Now, Kapila Muni is mentioning to Karadama Muni, he says that what is the purpose? When Krishna comes in the material world, he has a purpose. He says, I want people to start getting disentangled from these material desires. Everything that they want. It's always about material desires. But a wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness is I can use what I have in Krishna's service. Like, if I have a car, not that I'm going to give up everything that I have home and go to the forest. No, I don't have to do that, because Krishna is telling Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita that you fight. This is your duty. Now, if you are you're working for a company, you continue to work. You don't have to give up your job. But do your job, but do it for Krishna. Do you give the money, like how we just mentioned, clean up the house because thinking it's Krishna's house. Now, similarly, in this regard, he says that the material, when people use the matter for their own sense gratification, they get materially entangled. You have a beautiful car, use the car as transporting Krishna. You're going to Krishna's temple to do the service. That's what you're using it for. You're using a microphone, use a microphone to talk about Krishna. You have a cell phone, don't use the cell phone to do prajalpa. Do it to maybe getting on a conference call, discussing about Krishna. So whatever you're trying to do, try to keep Krishna as the center. So in that way, we will be able to, we talk about karma, akarma, vikarma in Bhagavad Gita. So these are all things that we will not incur karma at all. So here the word durashayat is very significant. Dur refers to the word dukkha or misery. Ashayat means from the shelter. We conditioned souls have taken shelter of the material body, which is full of troubles and miseries. Foolish people cannot understand the situation, and this is called ignorance, illusion, or the spell of Maya. How many people in this world feel that they have everything that they want? Now, I was just listening, I saw a news coverage recently where a person who was very well-known actor, and he said that he didn't feel very happy about his movie doing very great, because he feels that he has this question in his mind, who am I? I am getting all the riches. And I remember one of the very rich person, he said that I am here, I have $1 billion in my bank, I can give charity, I have everything, but I don't feel the satisfaction. Now, why are people feeling that? Because they miss Krishna. They miss the main point. They don't know where to head to. So this is so important. He says foolish people cannot understand the situation, and this is called ignorance. They are in illusion. They are in the spell of Maya. Human society should be very seriously understand that the body itself is the source of all miserable life. Modern civilization is supposed to be making advancement in scientific knowledge. But what is the scientific knowledge? It is based on the bodily comforts only. Unfortunately, there is no education system today which talks about the real life. It always talks about how to make this life, which is probably going to live max for 80 years, or maybe 100, maybe 120, and after that I'm going to be gone. So what is it? What all comforts I can do? That's the focus of our entire life now. Most people that's the education that has been taught to the kids. They have forgotten that after that 100 or 120 years, I'm going to be gone. I need to know where I'm going. I have to plan for that. I mean, I'm fine, I'm planning for something that I have to live in. Good, I need to plan for this also. But if I spend all my time planning for this temporary material world condition of this body, and I don't plan for my entire, wherever I'm going to go next, then I've just wasted my time. I've wasted my entire life. He says, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Antavanta ime deha. These bodies are destined to be destroyed. They will be destroyed. Nitya Shoktha Sharirinaha refers to the living soul or the living spark within the body. That soul is eternal, but the body is not. For our activity, we must have a body. Without a body, without sense organs, there is no activity. But people are not inquiring whether it is possible to have an eternal body, because even though they engage in sense enjoyment, then sense enjoyment is not eternal. They are therefore in want of something which they can enjoy eternally. Now, they are not asking this question, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to die, People have to start asking these questions. We see people dying. We see miseries happening. Every second day I go, there's somebody who's suffering from cancer or who's having this disease that don't know how long they're going to live. You see so many people. Now, I see many people that I work with who are really small kids who have different kinds of miseries. Now, when I'm thinking about all this, when I look at all these things, I'm sitting down thinking, where is the whole world going to? Or is anybody sitting down thinking that, why am I suffering? How am I going to get out of this suffering? So that's what he says. So he says, they are therefore in want of something which they can enjoy eternally, but they do not understand how to attain that perfection. That's what Kapila Muni is here for. He says, Sankhya philosophy, therefore, as started herein by Kapila Deva, is Tattvanam. The Sankhya philosophy system is designed to afford understanding of the real truth. What is the real truth? The real truth is knowledge of how to get out of this material body, which is the source of all trouble. Lord Kapila's incarnation of the descent is especially meant for this purpose, and he has very clearly stated this here. I know we'll probably have only about 15 minutes. I'll just go with the translations here. Now, this path of self-realization, which is difficult to understand, has now been lost in the source of time. Now, how Krishna mentioned explained Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, he said, I actually taught Bhagavad Gita to the sun god, Vivaswan. And then, we're looking at the sun every day. There is a person who's behind the sun. And we know from Shastras, his name is Vivaswan. And Vivaswan told it to Manu. So Krishna actually had told Bhagavad Gita to Vivaswan. But because after some time, it's a part of being in the material world, things get lost. So he came back again to tell the same Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. That's one of the first shlokas in Bhagavad Gita. He tells, this conversation I'm going to have with you, this Bhagavad Gita, is actually already spoken before many times. I remember everything, but you don't. He says, I'm going to tell you now again the same thing because it's lost. Similarly, Kapila Muni is not that he is telling this for the first time. He says, please know that I have assumed this body of Kapila to introduce and explain this philosophy to the human society again. He says that this was philosophy that was there existing before. Now, when we look at science and they say that, oh, you know what? They're only taking a little span of the world, and they say there was a Mesopotamia, how we have emerged, how we have become very advanced. We talk about all that. But when we really look at Bhagavatam, people were going from one planet to another. When you read some stories in Bhagavatam, the sages actually entered the water in Ganga and they got out from the other side. And so that's the reason Ganga is so precious. It's actually running from the top till the bottom. It's touching all the planets. It's flowing from the lotus feet of the Lord, and it's going through all the planets in all these universes. So people who know how to do it, they can actually go from one planet to other through Ganga. But if we, of course, people who don't know, they will of course go and drown in Ganga. So the question is, what are we trying to tell? We're trying to tell we've achieved something advanced, and unfortunately they're not realizing that they actually don't know even have 0.1% of what is really existing in this whole universe. Now, this path of self-realization, which is difficult to understand, has now been lost in the source of time. So Kapila Muni is actually reintroducing the entire Sankhya philosophy. And then he says, now, being sanctioned by me, go as you desire, surrendering all your activities to me, conquering insurmountable death, worship me for eternal life. He said that, okay, now you can go. So he's giving a permission to Karadama. He says, you can leave. And very important part he says is, I am going to talk about this important thing to my mother Devahuti. So Devahuti is lamenting here because she feels that she has spent her life in sense gratification. She wants to know about Krishna. But in truth, Devahuti is a great devotee, and these stories happen because, Krishna wants to do these pastimes, so the living entities get attracted towards him, know about the real purpose of life, and go back home, back to Godhead. So similarly, when we know that Arjuna is being spoken to by Krishna and he is hearing the Bhagavad Gita, and we say that Arjuna is actually confused, in true sense, Krishna puts Arjuna in confusion to teach Arjuna so that he can directly teach other living entities. Arjuna is a great devotee. He can never be under the spell of Maya at all, because he is surrendered soul to Krishna. But Krishna, when he comes with all his friends, his paraphernalia, his Gopa friends, his Gopi friends from Goloka, and that's the way he wants to help the other living entities. The purpose of Sankhya philosophy is stated herein. If anyone wants a real, eternal life, he has to engage himself in devotional service or Krishna consciousness. To become free from birth and death is not an easy task. Birth and death are natural to this material body. Very, very difficult to overcome. The modern so-called scientists do not have sufficient means to understand the process of victory over birth and death. Therefore, they set aside the question of birth and death. They do not even consider it. They simply engage in the problems of the material body, which is transient and sure to end. Actually, human life, very important paragraph, he says, actually human life is meant for conquering the insurmountable process of birth and death. Now, we have taken many, many lives. Probably, I would have taken a life in an ant, in a bug, bacteria, different ways. And then now I'm so lucky that I have got this human life. Now, what's the difference between an animal and a human life? I actually have this thought, at least. I can think, why am I suffering? Why am I in this? Because I have the intelligence. So he says, human life is meant for conquering the insurmountable process of birth and death. That can be done as stated here. Mam bhaja. One must engage in devotional service of the Lord. Now in Bhagavad Gita, Lord says, Manmana bhava mad bhakta. Just become my devotee, just worship me. But some of the foolish scholars may say that this is not Krishna whom we must worship, to whom we must surrender. It is something else. Without Krishna's mercy, therefore, no one can understand the Sankhya philosophy or any other philosophy. They have to surrender to Krishna. Sankhya means that actual knowledge by which one can get out of this material entanglement. So that makes it very clear. And I think that... no, there's one more. Let me check that. So the sage Karadama accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme. So after he got a permission, I'm having some trouble with my computer, I'm sorry. So we'll just do the last four of them from my book. He says the sage Karadama accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and take shelter of Him exclusively. Now without association, he traveled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi, devoid of any relationship with fire or shelter. Now, it's very important here, mauna, he's talking about mauna. Now, for Krishna conscious, according to the real meaning of mauna, what does it mean? It's not that I'm not going to be talking, but I'm not going to be talking anything other than Krishna. I'm not going to be talking anything other than that is important for my service. I'm not going to be, people talk about, oh, what did the other person do? What is right? What is wrong? They talk about everybody else's life. This is all prajalpa. You don't comment on others, you don't fault find. This is what is called as mauna. Mauna means you don't want to talk about others, you don't want to talk bad about others. If you have something good, praise devotees, yes. He says that mauna should be used in that regard. Rather, one becomes silent so that people will not disturb him. Now, it's very nicely, Chanakya Pandita was a very famous person, and he said that a person will appear very intelligent only until the time that he does not speak. But speaking is the test. The so-called silence of a silent impersonalist, Swami, indicates that he has nothing to say. So a person who says that I'm not going to be talking for so many days or I'm not going to be doing this, he says that that's not required. You have to be talking about Krishna. You have to talk about Krishna, you talk things that are related to Krishna. You want to cook something, you could talk about cooking something for Krishna, but you don't have to be quiet. So continuing what Karadama did, he fixed his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman, who is beyond cause and effect, who manifests the three modes of material nature, who is beyond those three modes, and who is perceived only through unfailing devotional service. He's talking about bhakti. When there is bhakti, bhakti, and the Bhagavan. So there is no meaning to the word bhakti if, without these three. Karadama Muni fixed his mind on the Supreme Brahman and realized him through bhakti or devotional service. So it is very important that we understand that Krishna has a beautiful feature and pray to him. Thus he gradually became unaffected by false ego of material identity and became free from material affection. Now when we are reading this, we understand Karadama Muni is totally becoming spiritualized. Now, when a person says that the Lord, when he appears, he takes a material form, makes no sense here. Because he says, when Karadama Muni himself, when he is able to follow the process of devotional service and become free of material affection, then we can understand how Krishna is. Now, undisturbed, equal to everyone, and without duality, he could indeed see himself also. His mind was turned inward and was perfectly calm, like ocean, unagitated. When ocean is unagitated, it's considered to be like a mind that is totally focused. So, and then he said, free from all hatred and desire, Karadama Muni being equal to everyone because of his discharging uncontaminated devotional service, ultimately attained the path of Godhead. Now in Bhagavad Gita, only by devotional service, we hear this from Krishna, that only by devotional service can one understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. And after understanding him perfectly in his transcendental position, enter into the kingdom of God. The process of entering into the kingdom of God is Tripada Bhuti Gati, or the path back home, back to Godhead, by which one can attain the ultimate life of God. Karadama Muni, by his perfected devotional knowledge and service, achieved this ultimate goal, which is known as Bhagavati Gati. So actually that ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 3rd canto of the 24th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Renunciation of Karadama Muni. So it has been wonderful reading this with all of you. My understanding of Bhagavatam is very limited. I would like to take all your blessings so that I understand these beautiful scriptures better. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Haribo Mataji.
That was very well put, and appreciate your effort here.
Thank you.
Being still in the grasp mode and hoping to pursue the Vanprastha and eventually sannyasa, there are some questions would come up in our minds and try and get some directions with the spiritual perspective. So the first is, we want to influence the world with Krishna consciousness. And yet, for that, we do need materialistic support.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to be earning enough to maybe devote to this temple, encouraging book distribution, the electronics that we are using. All that still requires us to be materialistically productive.
Yes, absolutely.
So there is often a dilemma, going into the forest and just trying to influence people, when people nowadays are not interested in looking at those people who have nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the first question I have, in terms of how do you balance that when you come to Vanaprastha or even sannyasa, to optimize your influence of bringing people to Krishna consciousness. That mode in the Kali Yuga doesn't apply, that you have nothing and you're promoting Krishna. On the other hand, if you have everything, if you have a lot and you're talking about Krishna, people want to listen to you.
Yeah.
Just the mindset and how you would want us to utilize this realization so that we can do the best we can for Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, very nice questions, Mataji. Prabhupada very nicely explains in the purport. He says that you don't have to go to the forest, especially this age. And we're very fortunate we have the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You have to be always with Krishna. That is samadhi. That is real sannyas. In true sense, actually, Matajis don't take sannyas. Like women don't take sannyas. They're always in the protection of a husband, the father when they're born, and then their husband, and then their child. So, in true sense, every living entity can be in samadhi, in sannyas all the time, because they are dedicating everything that they do for Krishna's sake. Now, that was your first question, right? I mean, when I'm working, I'm trying to earn money. I know that my purpose of earning money is that I can cook for Krishna. I can maintain a home where I can have the deity of Krishna and have programs so other people become Krishna conscious. I'll be able to donate to the temple so that we have a bigger preaching center and people will be able to come and see and learn about Krishna. So that's my purpose of earning. So my purpose of earning is not that I can buy a big $1 million home, that's no problem. But again, I use that home so that I can have programs. I can have people who are traveling from one place to another. When Guru Maharajas are traveling, you give them a place to stay, because that's part of being a grihastha. That's how we have to help them out. And we have to be able to put in whatever we do. We go, like I was just mentioning some time ago, we go to the market, we buy vegetables, we spend money. We know that we need that money. We have to be working. We cannot say that I'm going to be out of this material world and renounce myself. That's not what Krishna is telling Arjuna to do. If that was what Krishna wants to do, he would have told him that just quit the thing and fighting and go to the forest. No, he didn't say that. He said, do your duty. This is your work. You just have to work, have to be happening. Now again, when you go to work, you can see to it that you don't get into the conversation between people, putting people down, because we see this all the time at work. They're talking fault finding. We can try to keep away from that and do all the things that are related to Krishna, because when you're talking something, Krishna is always listening to you. So you want to please Krishna in every way. So when you do that, automatically you become happy because you are part of Krishna. So it's like I am happy just because I'm pleasing Krishna. Indirectly, Krishna is telling me to do that because I am going to become happy. So you see that? I am part of Krishna, I'm making Krishna happy, I'm going to become happy. And he is telling us, surrender to me so that you become happy, actually. That's the ultimate. But our mood has to be that we want to serve Krishna all the time. We want to be able to please him. And we are not thinking about our happiness. That is our mode when we are serving. So we are going to say that it doesn't matter if it's going to be hard or difficult, but this is what I'm going to do because Krishna is going to be happy. So absolutely, we have to be working. We have to go with what we do. We have to take some decisions in our lives that are going to be helpful for us as a family. We need to be able to support everything. I mean, truly, sometimes it looks like if people look at devotees outside, it looks like they live the same life as other people. But they are more happy just because they do everything for Krishna. And I'm sorry, Mataji, what was the second question?
So actually, thank you. That was a very good explanation. It's going to become a 2.5 question now because you brought in something about, being surrounded by people who may bring negativity or question your faith, or for that matter, have clearly Duryodhan-like qualities where they are really trying to destroy your not only peace but what you have created in your family, negatively influence them to do things which are completely against your principles of being Krishna conscious. So then to some extent you're tolerant and you still rejoice in their whatever they're trying to do, but they're, instead of coming to a point where really fighting like Krishna, like Arjuna would to Duryodhan, but one needing to disengage in that company. Could you expand that a little more? And actually, along that same path was you talked about how women should not necessarily be looking at, sannyasa out of home because you have so many ongoing obligations. And even when you are done with raising up your kids, there are grandkids along, then you hope to influence them in Krishna consciousness so that the rest of the world is not taking them in a path which is going to be disruptive for their own well-being.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking that the most important thing for a devotee is sadhana. Association is very important because, that's what people do even for many of these weight loss things, right? That you go and get in contact with people who are able to do it. If you're with drunkard, you become a drunkard. If you're with devotees, you become a devotee. So very important is to think that my connection in the entire world is just mainly with devotees, and keeping my sadhana very still. To get up in the morning and chant my 16 rounds. When I have my 16 rounds done before I get off to work, I have already set up a big, when you go to the battlefield, you have a guard. So you have a guard ready, and whatever comes your way will be easy for you. As the years of practice go by, even if people talk bad, you will just ignore. You will just do your duty and keep going because that's your job. People are going to be like that. But truly, after some time, you will influence people in that. They'll come back and ask you, how come you never get affected by this? All these things happen at work. How come you're not affected? Then maybe that way you can give them a copy of Bhagavad Gita and tell them. So the most important is our sadhana and our association. associating with people who have a strong sense of advancing in Krishna consciousness, and to be able to chant your 16 rounds in the morning really helps, really helps. I mean, I've always seen the days, I mean, not that I'm a very regular 16-round chanter before I get off my home, but the days that I don't do my chanting, just because of something that has come up at home or work that I'm not able to do my rounds in the morning, I do face a big thing while I'm at work, because I'm very disturbed. My mind is not under control. I feel terrible. So that way it really helps. So I think sadhana is very important, because when you're chanting, you're directly in connection with Krishna. That kind of takes care of everything else.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very
Mataji.
nicely answered.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Hare Krishna.